Welcome back to Monster Tamer, our 2D Pokemon-like RPG created Phaser 3. In this video, we're going to continue working on our NPC Battle feature, and we're going to focus on adding in new states to our battle scene so we can have our NPC show up at the beginning of our battle and at the end of our battle. If you haven't seen the previous episode, you can find the link in the description. As always, you can grab the project source code up to this point, along with the completed code for this video, from the links in the description. I'll also include any assets you'll need to follow along. So let's get started. So at the end of our last video, we managed to update our battle scene, so now we can no longer flee from our battle, and we can't use capture items when we're battling an NPC. So now for our battle scene, we want to enhance this so when we're battling an NPC, at the start of our battle, we'll have our NPC appear and then talk to us before they bring out the monster they have in their party. As part of these changes, we'll want to make updates to the UI so we can show how many monsters the NPC has, just like we do for our party. Finally, at the end of our battle, if we're battling an NPC, we'll have our NPC reappear and show that defeated message that we added before we leave our battle. To get started with our changes, let's jump over to our battle scene, and first we're going to add in new states for our NPC. So at the top of our file, in our battle states object, let's add in two new states. We'll copy our pre-battle info state, we'll paste that in, and now we're going to call this pre-battle info, and we'll do NPC. So now by breaking this out into its own state, it allows us to keep our logic for our NPC battle isolated with our battles with our wild monsters. Finally, we'll need one more state for if our NPC has more than one monster, we need to have our NPC bring out the other monster in their party. Let's copy our switch monster state, and we'll call this NPC switch monster. We'll go ahead and save. So now before we define our states and add them to our state machine, let's come down to our battle scene class. We'll need to make some changes to our properties on our class. First, we're going to modify our property for our available monsters UI container. So for our battle scene, this is tied to our player. We'll also want to have one that's associated with our NPC, and we want this to be very clear. So we're going to copy that property name, we're going to search for it in our code, and we're going to update our name to be available monsters UI container for player. So if we do a find and replace, we can replace all of those in our file. And now we'll copy that property in its type, and we want to define one for our NPC. So we'll keep the same property name, but we'll do for NPC. And now we want this to be optional, so we'll do or undefined, because you only want to create this container if we're battling an NPC. Besides this property, we'll want to add in an index to keep track of which NPC monster we're currently fighting. We're going to copy that property here, we'll add that in. We'll change this to be active enemy monster party index. So for our type, that'll be our number. So now with our new properties, let's come down to our init method and we'll initialize our values. Let's copy our property for our active player monster party index. We'll update this to reference our enemy. And now we'll set our available monsters UI container for NPC, and we'll set it to be undefined. Finally, with our new enemy monster index, let's come down to our create method where we create our enemy battle monster. Instead of doing index 0, we're going to reference our new property on our class. So we'll have our active enemy monster party index. Finally, one last change we'll do is down in our update method where we do all of our checks for our states, and if we can press our space key, we want to add in our two new states here. So we'll copy our line of code for our pre-battle info, we'll paste that in, we'll do our pre-battle info NPC state, we'll copy the switch monster state, and we'll do our NPC switch monster. Next, let's come down to our create battle state machine method. So here, we'll want to add in our two new states. So I'm going to copy our block of code for our intro state, we'll paste that in, we'll update our state name, so we'll have our pre-battle info NPC state. So now in our onEnter method, we'll remove our code. We're just going to add a to-do for the time being. Let's copy that block of code. We'll come down to where we define our switch monster state. Let's paste that in. We'll update our state name, and we'll have our NPC switch monster. All right, let's come up to our pre-battle info NPC state. So once we enter the state, we first want to wait for our enemy NPC game object to show up on our screen. For our battle, we're going to have our NPC appear just like a wild monster does and move across our screen. Once our NPC has appeared, we want to show our text for you are now battling that trainer's name. Once our text has appeared, we'll then want to hide our NPC game object and then bring out their enemy monster. And so when that happens, we'll transition to our pre-battle info state, that way we can have that monster appear. So now for our state, let's copy our line of code where we set our state to our pre-battle info. We'll paste that in. And now to actually transition into this state, we need to do that from our intro state. So in our intro state, we want to do a check if this is a trainer battle. So if it is a trainer battle, we'll want to go to our new state. So let's copy this. We're going to paste it, but we want to go to our pre-battle info NPC state. If we do that transition, we'll return early. Otherwise, we just want to show our pre-battle info state. All right, so if we want to go ahead and test our logic, let's go ahead and trigger our battle. Now, once the battle starts, we should see we enter our pre-battle info NPC state, and then we immediately transition to our pre-battle info. So now before we add in our logic for displaying our NPC wants to battle message in our battle scene, I want to take a moment to refactor how we're handling some of our input when we display messages to the player. So right now in our battle scene, our goal with the messages we're displaying to our player, we want our player to be able to read the message and then provide input to confirm that they've read the message. Once they read the message and we finish processing all of our messages, we want to lock our input until we transition to a battle state where our player needs to provide input again. The reason we want to do this is we have a number of different states in our battle scene where if our input is not locked, it will mess up our game state since we're not waiting for things to finish. And so throughout our code, right now we're doing things like we're unlocking our input, we're then displaying our messages, and then we're locking our input after that. And we're doing this in a number of different spots. To keep our code a little bit more clean, we're going to create a new private method in our class that's going to handle this for us. And then that way, we can just pass the message we want to show, and then we'll lock and unlock our states as needed. And so this will help us avoid bugs when it comes to locking and unlocking our player input. So to add this new logic, let's copy our block of code from our pre-battle info state where we unlock our input and we show our messages. We'll come down to our bottom of our class. We're going to add a new private method. So for this method, we're going to call it show messages and wait for input. So now this method will expect two arguments. First is our messages array that we want to show, and then a callback function that will invoke once we're done showing all of our messages. So we'll paste in our block of code that we copied. So now in our method, we'll first want to unlock our input. We'll call our battle menu, and we'll do our update info pane messages and wait for input. Instead of doing our hard-coded message, we'll pass in our messages array. So now in our callback, we'll want to lock our input. So let's copy this, we'll paste it. We're going to set this to be true. Let's remove this, and now we'll invoke our callback. So now what we can do is back up in our pre-battle info method. Let's call our new method. So we'll do this, we'll do show messages and wait for input. Now we need to provide our messages, so we're going to copy our array. Now in our callback, we just want to run our code here. Let's remove this. And now if we save, we should be able to test our changes. So let's start our battle. We'll have our NPC, we go into our pre-battle info, we show our message just like before, and if we provide our input, we go to our next state. So now we'll just want to update the rest of our code in our battle scene to use this new method for displaying our messages. So for our change, let's go into our post-battle sequence check method. Inside here, we're doing this battle menu, update info pane messages, and wait for input. So let's copy this part of our code here, and we're going to search for it. We should find 10 instances of that in our class, and now we'll do a find and replace. So let's go ahead and manually update this one. So we're going to do this, we'll do show messages and wait for input, and then we'll provide our messages and our callback. So I'm going to copy this part of our code here. Let's go ahead and put that in our replace. Now if we step through our code, we can replace each instance. But we want to make sure we don't replace the one inside our show messages and wait for input method. Alright, so now that we're done refactoring our code, let's do a quick battle just to make sure nothing broke. So if we talk to our NPC should bring out their monster. Oh, looks like we have an issue where once we get to our battle scene, we can actually move our input. To fix this, we'll need to unlock our input once we get to our player input state. So if we search for our player input battle state, we'll do this, we'll do our controls, we're going to do lock input, and we'll set equal to false. That way our player can provide their input. So let's trigger our battle again. So now once we get to our battle menu, we can now choose one of our options. So we should be able to go into our items, go into switch. Now if we do fight, we can choose one of our moves. We'll finish up our battle real quick, and we'll make sure the rest of our logic works. Alright, so once we get to our end of our battle, the enemy monster disappears, we get our experience, and then we transition back to our world scene. Nice. Alright, that's going to wrap up this episode of Monster Tamer. In our next video, we're going to work on adding our NPC to our battle scene, and then start building out some of our states. You can find the completed source code for this video in the description below, along with the links to the full series if you need to catch up. If you enjoyed this episode, give it a thumbs up. It really helps others find the series. And if you've been enjoying these phaser tutorials and want to support the channel, I've set up a Ko-fi page. Even a one-time coffee helps me keep making more content like this, and the link's down in the description. Don't forget to subscribe and hit the bell so you'll know as soon as the next episode is out. Thanks so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.